everybody. Welcome to Revival Town Podcast. I'm Chuck Tate. That's Andy King.
Chuck Tate.
Andy King.
How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing good.
Yeah.
You know, most of our listeners and viewers know that we pre-record a lot of our episodes.
Yeah.
And we had the opportunity to do something. It was actually this week, but it's been now available for weeks for those that are listening to this episode.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We went to a Cubs game.
Oh, man.
Thanks to you.
Was it good?
It was fantastic.
It was really fun. So this happened pretty about a few days before. A friend of ours of the podcast, Trent Freeze, big shout out to Trent.
Thank you, Trent. Love you, Trent. He's the one who sent us our very first, before we even launched a merch store, he created merch. He made a Revival Town Podcast t-shirts that say "Don't be a plonker." Sent them to us. A good close friend of yours, and I was glad. It was my first time meeting him in person at the game.
Yeah, and the thing that was, I mean, it was amazing, wasn't it?
It was.
Trent is a longtime friend of mine. He lives in Jacksonville, Florida. Used to live in Central Illinois, and works for this company. It's a multi-million-dollar company, and so he gets to go to certain places because people want to be his friend. let's be honest. No, he has some major global accounts, and so part of doing business in that world is going to places. Last year we went
wining and dining people, right?
I went to the Ryder Cup last year with him.
Yeah, you were wearing your Ryder Cup hat at the Cubs game.
Oh yeah,
I noticed. Yeah. I noticed. You know,
and so, but Trent was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town. I've got a couple of tickets. Do you want to meet me in Chicago?" And we were like,
"You were like, yeah,"
yes.
And then you sent me a text, and I was like, "Yeah." So
thank you to Trent. But we had a blast. Now, we did something that you had never done before.
That is right. I've never, like, at a Cubs game, sat on anybody else's lap. Thank you. That was really cool that I didn't realize I was going to have to share a seat with you. But, no, I rode a train. I mean, I've ridden a train before, but never the city train. You know what I mean? Not that experience. I don't even know what it's called, but the train that took us from downtown Chicago right around Grand Avenue.
Yeah, the
Michigan
L.
Avenue. It took us, it was called the L. Yeah. Right to the Cubs game. Right to Wrigley.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, when we go to London, you know, going in the underground, I mean, that's the only way you get around London and the big cities. Me and my wife just love that experience. And I know some people are freaked out a little bit sometimes, but I mean, I know you were looking at me with the conversation of one of the homeless ladies that was sitting there.
I smell fresh urine.
Yeah. So
thanks, Andy.
It is an experience, as you can imagine, but something pretty cool happened at the game.
At the game, so yeah, we rode the train. We got the game, and we were recording a video, and you can watch this, by the way. Yeah. It's out there on YouTube. But I got out my phone and I was introducing our listeners and viewers to Trent.
Yeah.
And we were thanking Trent for the tickets because it was, you know, the game up to that point was boring. We were losing 2-0.
Yeah.
We had just finished the 7th inning stretch.
Yeah.
So it's the bottom of the 7th. And it's not looking good for the Cubs. We only had 4 or 5 hits up to that point. And as we're filming, the Cubs hit a home run.
Home run. If you go onto our YouTube channel, you'll see this. You have to go into the video a little bit, but
because it interrupted.
Everyone went crazy. Yeah. We started dancing. I mean, it was great. It's well worth going on just to see it. For that. Yeah. But it was a great day, wasn't it?
You know what? Great day, great moment. Probably a highlight of the year.
Yeah.
So speaking of a highlight of the year, today is special.
It is. I'm looking behind you at the graphic. It is our 100th episode.
Episode 100.
Can you believe that we made it?
Yeah.
And so we thought we would do something a little bit special. Why don't you tell us what we're doing today?
You know what? We're going to each we have each written down kind of our top 10 moments. Top 10 moments that we've had since we've been doing this a year and a half. We're going to be actually getting closer to 2 years doing this. And I just got to say my number one moment is doing with you, mate. Yeah. No, it's been so fun. It's been, honestly, for me, it's been therapeutic. And I hope that you guys listening and watching, it's been therapeutic for you, because this is for you. So, I mean, our number one highlight has to be you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We want to thank people like Trent for sending us merch. We want to thank Nicole Jackson, who we've had on as a guest, but loves the show. Her son Trip even, sent us sent us a little donation. Just special, really special. So it's people like Trent and Nicole and others. My friend Susan, who listens, who's purchased merch, who loves the show, listens multiple times throughout the week. We have some great fans and some great friends.
I tell you who else listens every week. Got to give him a shout out. My dad.
Hey, Pastor John!
Yeah, he listens every week, and I'll get a text if it's a good one. And he will let me know if it was like, if the guest was like, don't know about that one.
I love your dad, and I don't know if I've shared this on a podcast, but he's really been a mentor to me, a close friend throughout the years. And in fact, I got really close to him before I was even knew you. We would go to lunch and talk ministry and he would often tell me, stay away from that Tate. Oh man, so we got to get him on sometime.
I wasn't joking.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. We'll have to get him on for sure. But today we wanted to go back a bit because we understand, I think we may be just touching, we may have even gone over 50,000 downloads. We're really, really close to that.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's people listening and watching, and now that we've gone on YouTube, it's gone, even more because people like to see our reaction and what we do and things like that. But
by the way, we've had listeners from 92 countries.
Wowzers.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That doesn't mean people from 92 countries are listening to every episode.
Right.
But we've had listeners from 92 countries.
Wow.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, what we thought we would do today is go through like our top 10 moments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we've put some of these together. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see some of this as well. If you're listening, obviously you're going to hear it. But on YouTube, we're going to try and pull some of the old footage. Some of it we don't have because we weren't videoing at that time. But it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And let us know who you want to hear in the future, who you'd like us to interview, who you want us to talk to. Tell us what you love the show. And if you haven't given us a rating on Apple Podcasts, that really does help too. So thanks.
So here we go.
All right.
Sit back and relax and enjoy this episode with our favorite moments.
This podcast is part of the Edify Podcast Network. Edify is a faith-inspiring app that brings together thousands of the best Christian podcasts in one place for your listening enjoyment. Cut through the noise and grow your faith by diving into the world's top Christian podcasts today. Download the Edify app for free from the App Store or Google Play, or by going to edify.app. That's edifi.app.
Okay, so So, Chuck, why don't you step into this right off the bat? Because I know, obviously...
What's funny is we wrote down a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of people ask us, how do you get all these guys? Like this week, it was Trent, he was like, how are you going to keep this going? All these people that you're connected with and all that. And we'll just keep going until people say no.
Right.
But we started, obviously, you've got contacts, I've got contacts. And back when we started the podcast, we were like, let's just start asking people. And then as you start getting people on the podcast, people get to know about your podcast as well. And so some of the folks that we've got on, we've been able to name drop a little bit to be able to get someone on. You know what I mean?
Opens the door, paves the way.
Yeah.
When you say, for example, we've had people like pop icon Amy Grant. Obviously, whoever is reading the appeal for us to reach out to usually will pay attention.
Yeah.
And sometimes we've actually booked some other pretty cool guests, and it just hasn't worked out. Sometimes timing is hard because most of the time we usually pre-record on Fridays only.
Yeah.
We have done Thursday. I think one time we did a Wednesday. When we interviewed Angela Williams, the time zone was so different. We came in really early in the morning.
Yeah.
It was really late at night for her. That was kind of cool. But sometimes it's just been a matter of nailing down schedules. Like we had one guy, I'm not going to mention his name just because you know who he is and we're still working on getting him, but it was actually booked on the calendar, but then it was double booked, and then he started a European tour, and then it didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, so we're still hoping. We're working on stuff.
Yeah, we
behind
are.
the scenes.
We are. And
we want to
got-
bring some cool stories to you.
We'll announce someone at the end that we've already done the interview for October.
Yes.
That you guys are going to love. But let's go back a bit,
Yeah,
Chuck.
let's do it.
Let's do. Let's go with you.
Okay, all right. These aren't, by the way, in an order, but I just randomly wrote down 10 moments that jump out to me. So the first one that I have written down was our very first episode. For one, it was special. We were launching this podcast. We were getting off the ground. It was a friend of yours and named Pete Hixson, and I hope I can call him friend now as well because we've had him twice on the podcast. But the reason I wrote that down was not just because it was our first episode, but somebody listened to the first episode who connected with Pete's story. And our purpose of Revival Town Podcast is to bring you stories, to highlight people and movements who are making a difference. Pete's doing that. He had a vision. Somebody heard about that vision, connected, and bam, some really cool stuff unfolded. So that's first on my list.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, Pete, and he's helped us, you know, even with the person we're going to talk about later who's going to be on in October. Pete is very close to this guy, and that's how we were able to really connect with him. But Pete's heart for what we do here, but also for ministry, local church, even with the whole special needs community that he's working with now. That was a great time having him on the two times because so much happened in between.
Yes, yeah, and he connected with one of our other guests, Jessica Ronnie, right?
Yeah.
And so cool.
That was a good one. We are so excited for the interview that we're about to have. We have with us today Pete Hixson, who is a personal friend of mine, Chuck. He's been on an amazing journey over many years. Our roads collided in Nashville when we were both on staff at Crosspoint, and so as we were talking about people who we would like on this show, the first person that came to my mind was Pete Hixson. I mean, going from those two worlds, right, church world to now really a marketing type of visionary type world. What are some of the big differences you're seeing?
You know, I was on another friend's podcast not too long ago, and he asked me a question like that. He's a pastor in the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, doing a great work. And I think this isn't a practical difference, but it's something internal, is that I have had to wrestle with, am I as good of a Christian without the label pastor as I am, as I was with that label, right? So is my fellowship of Jesus, I don't want to say genuine because, you know, I would like to think that it is, but that's been something I've had to wrestle with. When that's not your occupation,
right.
You know, where do you fall? So that's been something internally. Externally, I would say, it's just people. I mean, it's all people. Yeah. And if I'm not thinking about a title, I don't feel any different. And so I you know, there are clearly some differences. My weekly routines are very different. And unless I'm speaking at a church on Sunday, my Saturdays are very different these days.
Right.
In this way, you know this, it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just Saturdays at 5 o'clock on, you know, you're thinking about Sunday, you know, you're just getting in, your stomach starts getting tight. You're like, hey, you know, and my wife and I will be cooking dinner on Saturday night and we'll just be like, oh, it's crazy. But, I'm kind of joking about that one, but there's practical differences. in what we do and what we don't do anymore. But I guess a takeaway from me is it's just people, you know, and if we can wipe off our labels, and I think that's something that we could think about in our current society right now. If we could wipe off our labels, if we could wipe off what we think we have to be attached to and see one another for human beings that God loves and God has created, then I think we would have less hate and just less, you know, strong opinions. I'm all for strong opinions, but when you start shaming people on one side or the other, that's not acting like brothers and sisters very well. And so I don't know, I'm kind of bleeding into something else right now, but it's just people, you know, we just got to learn how to act with one another.
Good one. Okay. So for me, obviously, if you know me, you know, there's a little band in England that changed. Are you okay? It looks like you're about to.
I almost spit out my coffee. We've only had every member of this band.
No.
The name of our podcast was inspired by one of their songs.
That's right. So we have had, if you're familiar with the band Delirious, we have had 4 of the 5 band members on.
Yeah,
right?
Wait, what band is it called? You say?
Oh my gosh.
Kidding.
But these guys obviously aren't the band Delirious anymore, but they have gone on to do some incredible things, and just stepping into their world now as far as what's going on. You know, we had Martin Smith on, who right now is blowing up. I mean, he's just done a song, one of his older songs, but with the Belonging Co., which is probably in the States right now, is probably the biggest worship movement, I feel, that's happening. And he had a song on there. We had Stu G, who is the guitarist for Michael W. Smith now.
Yeah, he was cool. I really like Stu.
Yeah,
and Martin, of course, was great. And I, by the way, I have in my top 10, I included them. I just wrote down all the Delirious members because you know, Tim Jupe was the first one we had.
Yeah,
and that was just a really cool, authentic conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and Tim, they just did Big Church Day Out in England. They've called it Big Church Festival now. Remember when we were talking to him, he had just laid off all his staff because of COVID.
Yeah.
And but yet they had a very, very successful festival. I think 30,000 people showed up for a weekend.
Unbelievable.
So those, and then Stu Smith, the drummer, that, to be honest, has inspired.
He's a
so
cool
many
cat too. Yeah,
so many.
Yeah,
and let me throw this out.
That might have been my favorite out of all. I
them
liked
all?
them all. Yeah, I don't know. Stu Smith was just really. I just loved his heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Stu really inspired our family. I know I've talked about Ethan and Clay a lot because they're out of the home and I miss them, right? But Ethan, my son, he's a creative, and if you went into his room when he was a kid, there was Stu Smith pictures on the wall. He went down the path like Stu of creative design. He's now at Mosaic doing that, but also, which is pretty hot off the press, he's actually doing this as we speak. He is going on tour with Mosaic Music, with Amanda Cook, who was part of Bethel at one time, as well, doing a tour, which is a big dream come true. But I'm telling you that because it's all from this guy, Stu Smith, that he used to watch literally every day on videos and seeing him. So the Delirious guys were a good one for us. We have with us Tim Jupe, who is... okay, Tim, I know the other guys in Delirious wouldn't say this, but I would say you were the backbone of that band. Because you just...
Is that a compliment, or is that, I don't know how to say that?
Because you knew how to lay the pad. I mean, honestly, Chuck, when we started doing a lot of the Delirious stuff at different churches and things like that, like, the sound was so new because of this big pad that would be in the background. What was that like, Tim, when Delirious was starting off? Tell us a little bit about the movement that started Delirious. What was that like?
Well, we started back in the early 90s, and we used to gather kids in our small town, and it was a real one-horse seaside town. We live in only 30,000 people. Oh. And we used to gather these kids, and after about a year or so, we had about 1,300 young people coming every month. And then we started doing it in the next town along, and then the next town along the coast. And after a couple of years, we were gathering about 3,000 young people every month in these locations, and they would just come for 2 hours and worship together. And in the summertime, we'd get them all together and we'd do something on the beach where we lived. And about 10,000 people used to turn up. And that was amazing when I look back, because that was like before we had any internet, any social media. It was all just kind of word of mouth, and people would turn up on the beach on this one Sunday in July, gather and worship, and we used to give the gospel. People gave their lives to Jesus, and we just took them straight in the sea and baptised them.
Oh man!
Well, I'm not sure about the theology on that, but just believe and be baptised, isn't it? So we just went for it.
Yeah. What are some of the memories for you? Obviously, many may not know this, but you opened for Bon Jovi, Bryan Adams. You were able to go and tour with some great musicians, and they came and toured with you. For instance, people may not know this, but one of Chris Tomlin's first tours was to open for Delirious, and that was in his early career. So what were some of the memories for you over the years, apart from coming to Peoria, Illinois?
Yeah. Well, that was up there, right up there. There's so many gigs. I mean, there's a couple. One we signed a deal with Virgin Records, because the other thing with us is that we still had this kind of, it wasn't a desire to be a mainstream artist. It was a desire to have a voice into culture.
Yeah.
And we realised that if you put all your eggs into the Christian basket, it's fantastic, but there's a whole world outside of that culture. It's a subculture. Yeah. And so we signed with Virgin Records really so that we could get some mainstream airplay, and all of our songs were worship songs. We just worked at the poetry,
right?
So we didn't use church language, and funny enough, that thread has worked its way through me now into the creative.
Stu G, our guest today, tours with Michael W. Smith.
Yeah, he used to be in the band Delirious. I know we've had three of we've had 3 of the 5 members.
Welcome to the Delirious podcast.
And I know that Stu Smith, who's the drummer, is going to text me saying, okay, what have I done? Because why aren't I on the show yet? Stu, you'll be coming soon. But seriously, Stu G, he is the electric guitarist for Delirious, or was for Delirious. He wrote a lot of the songs with Martin. Majesty, Revival Town, he wrote that with Martin. And so we had Stu on today that he now is with Michael W. Smith.
And you told me that he co-wrote the song God of Miracles.
Yes, right? I didn't know that until I saw that today. That's amazing.
Yeah, so cool.
So we know you're going to have a great time today listening to this, because it's not just about music. He's been on a journey. He wrote a book called Words from the Hill, all about the Beatitudes, and has now turned it into an e-course. You'll hear all about that today.
And you'll find out how you can sign up for the e-course, and it won't cost you much either.
Yeah.
Blessed are the meek is a really important one for me. So, meekness, we grew up in our sort of evangelical churches understanding meekness as strength under control. I believe that's the direct kind of Greek sort of translation. But when I was thinking about, so who are the meek in my neighborhood, I began to look at this idea of like power. What does power look like? And what do the overpowered, and then on the other side, what does the underpowered, who are they? What does that look like? I have a friend who's a rabbi, and we talked for about 3 days about this, and we came up with this phrase that the meek are those whose presence is ignored, right? So who are the people in your neighborhoods whose presence is ignored? Perhaps it's the elderly couple down the road, or perhaps it's the mentally ill person, or the the blind person or something, or perhaps it's your black neighbor, or perhaps it's your refugee neighbor.
Yeah. Today we have a guest on the show who's a friend of mine, been a long-time friend. His name's Martin Smith. Martin Smith was the lead singer for the worship band, because they weren't just worship, Delirious, a UK band that, I'll be honest with you, Chuck, and you can talk into this as well, being a pastor. There was worship like in the 80s, 70s, 80s, but Delirious changed the landscape for the modern worship sound. They brought a fresh sound that really did change the worship movement that we know today. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. They were definitely pioneers to the modern worship sound. And the history of the church that I lead, Rock Church, when we left the Bible Belt, Tulsa, my wife and I, to plant Rock Church in 1998, we wanted to create a church for people who didn't feel comfortable in a traditional church setting. Modern rock and roll worship style of church. Now everybody has it's become, like you said, a movement. And Delirious, they led the charge then.
The Christian music scene wasn't big in the UK, pretty much non-existent. And so you had to think differently about how you were going to reach that generation. And so it was, hey, we're going to play it to anyone, which got the Radio 1 and other major national radio stations listening. And tell us a bit about that, because that's different than over here where you do everything in the Christian world and hopefully you'll make it. Here, you're literally presenting the message of Christ in a way that is compatible, but also the message still gets out.
Yeah, and I think as well, as I referred to earlier on, I think being British gave us a different freedom and a license to go and be evangelists. And I think, I can see sort of, if you're a band, you're church guys growing up in a church and you want to be a rock and roll band, you're always going to get people saying, whoa, like that's the dark side. If you want to sort of be the Killers or be whoever it is, mainstream, well, stay away from danger. And partly that's true, some of that. But I think that we just, as I said, we didn't have that frame here. And we were like, great, let's just, if Radiohead can get on the radio, so can we.
Right. And it was that faith element.
We just believed in it so much, and we believed that God was on it. And also we wanted to sing, and this is really important, we were called to sing over people that would never come to church. And I think that was really at the heart of who Delirious were, was this: if we were worship evangelists, we wanted to be on the front of the army singing over our nation. And you never know, calling people back to Jesus. I think we need that in the worship scene. We need the worship evangelists to not worry about Christian radio and worry about this and chart positions and publishing, but to go into the cities, go into the street and sing.
Who else did you have down?
I had down the Delirious guys. I just have down Delirious bus driver. That's okay. Obviously Dallas Jenkins and Lotta from The Chosen, because there's separate episodes. We were fortunate to be able to talk to Dallas, some behind the scenes and story of The Chosen, and of course Lotta Silva, an actress on the show who plays Eden, Simon's wife, who is going to be featured in a much larger role in season 3 than she was in season 2. Yeah, it was cool to hear her story.
I've been following her, on Instagram, and Dallas as well has been posting, and she is in season 3 a lot. Like they've been showing not footage but behind the scenes.
Right.
That was really intriguing to just have them. Their perspective
Yes.
on how they're impacting the world through the chosen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there one or two short God stories or miracles? Obviously, you have given your loaves and fishes, and God has done so many things. Is there one or two quick stories that just jump out?
Yeah, in fact, if you go to our YouTube channel, you just look up The Chosen online. There's a couple of videos, including one that we're as I speak to you, we're finishing up the edit of. It's called 3 Miracles. It refers to the 3 significant kind of moments where God stepped in and took things under his control throughout the process of season 2. And there's one, if you look on YouTube, called the Miracle of the Fish.
Yes.
It talks about the filming of the season 1, episode 4, fish miracle. But one of the stories that it always stands out is as we were filming in season 2, the weather was bad off and on. And there was one day where the only opportunity we had to film at the lake was that day. We had this scene in season 2. There's multiple scenes that take place at the lake in the season finale. And we only had it for one day, and the actors were leaving. One of them was flying back to Australia the next day. I mean, this was it. We had to film, and it was supposed to rain that day. And so, but yet it wasn't going to rain the day before, where we also filmed at the lake. So it would have been a big problem in continuity if it rained on that day, and it would have kept us from being able to shoot. And it was a big, big problem. And my wife just felt led by God that we were going to be fine. And so she told me that, and I'm like, well, that's nice, but tell the radar and tell the weather. And so we get there on that day, and I'm like, well, the good news is it's not raining, but there's such heavy fog. It's the heaviest fog I've ever seen in my life. I can't even see 20 feet in front of me. We can't film. Oh. And so we were sitting there waiting for the fog to dissipate, and the radar was like, it'll be foggy till 1:00 in the afternoon. And we're like, well, that's only going to leave us with 5 hours to film, which we need a full day. This is 9 pages of dialogue we have to film, which typically takes at least the full day. And so we're waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's not going away. And then the radar says it's going till 2:00. And then the radar says it's going till 4:00. And so we get to lunchtime, which is around 1 or whatever, and we're starting to think about contingencies and do we just have to lose these scenes from the show? And my co-writer is there, and we're struggling to figure out how to overcome this. And then finally the radar says it's going to be a thick, heavy fog till 8:00 at night. It's all day. Oh. So that's not shootable. So we're like, this is devastating. I'm telling my wife this. I'm like, it looks like we're not going to be able to shoot today. This is awful. And she said, yeah, I don't think that's true. And she said, let's start thanking God. She goes, yeah, I still have the text. She goes, let's start thanking God for his faithfulness, because that's what he's been doing with this show from day one. And over and over and over again, we get to these what we call Red Sea moments, where we're at the edge of the Red Sea, and the Egyptians are coming, and there's only one way out, and that's for God to part the waters. And then he does, and it just always happens with this show. And this is one of those moments where it's like, well, we just found out that God's not going to part the waters. It looks like we're going to have to go, and we're just going to. So we started telling crew, all right, you guys can go to our next location, start preparing for tomorrow. And I go to the makeup trailer to talk to the actors and tell them, looks like we're not going to be able to do it. And they're devastated because they love the scene. They've been preparing for it. And they're like, we can come back. We can come back in a couple of weeks. I'm like, I don't even know. But we'll see. We'll try to figure it out, but we're not going to be able to film. And cars are starting to pull out of the parking lot. And I turn to leave my makeup room. And I look out and I can see the other side of the lake. And I go, is that the other side of the lake? Like, how do I see that? I haven't seen it all day. Like, I haven't been able to see 20 feet in front of me. And I go, I see trees. Like I'm across the lake. What's happening? And all of a sudden I start hearing yelling, and things over the walkies are like, the fog cleared, everyone stop. They're calling back the cars and racing, and we run down. It's like a mile away from the makeup trailers. We run down to the beach. And as the boat was being loaded onto the dock, the first century Galilee boat that we were going to be filming some of the stuff in, literally, and people who live there said, I've never seen this in my entire life. A gust of wind came, and it was like, whew, and the fog cleared, like in less than 5 minutes. Like it just lifted and lifted to the skies and was gone in 5 minutes, just like that.
Come on.
Everything's clear. So we're like, we got to film. And we've only got like 3 hours of sunlight to film 2 full scenes. So my director of photography is like, let's just try to get 1 scene in. And I'm like, no, we got to try to get 2. He's laughing at me. He's literally laughing. He's like, well, that's not possible. We don't have enough time. I said, well, even if we can just shoot the second scene in one shot, at worst case scenario, the actors screw up. Worst case, it doesn't work, but at least let's try, you know? So we're flying through. Well, very long story short, because the fog had lifted into the sky, when the sun was lowering, it was reflecting off of the fog. And so it was basically giving light, even as the sun was lowering behind the trees.
Wow.
The fog that was up in the sky now was reflecting light. And so my cinematographer was like, the day keeps extending. Like, it feels like the day is lengthening, like more than it's supposed to. We ended up getting everything we needed to in 4 hours, which was a miracle in itself.
Yeah.
But that was one of those. And I remember, like, I still, it's been emotional thinking about it, but I just remember I didn't have time to tell my wife, like, while we were filming so fast, I didn't have time to tell her anything. Yeah. And it was 3 hours later, then I finally finished, and I just kind of burst into tears because I can't believe we got it. We got everything we wanted. And I text her, I'm like, well, guess what?
You were right.
Right along, even when everything else was saying, no, it's not going to happen. So, that story is always, we call it the miracle of the fog. And
what was the difference between season 1 and 2? Walking on that first day, and then walking on in second season,
and then going into 3.
Yeah, and then going into 3, which is recorded now.
Yeah, it was, wow, what a journey. I think about the first day, right, when I stepped on set. The cast and crew were incredible. Everyone was just so welcoming, so sweet. And you could feel something special about this set. And I was really, really nervous. This was like one of the biggest things that I had booked, where it was longer than like one line. You know, I actually got to I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I really needed to like just rely on God. Like, God, somehow I'm here, but like, I'm so nervous. I don't know what I'm really doing, and hope the only thing I can do is really rely on you, that like all of the preparation and the work that I've been doing, will serve it justice and just give this story life and who Eden is.
Or is it my go?
Yeah.
I'm going to put two guys together here because they were actually our longest podcast that we ever did, but both so good, and that was Leland and Jd Walt.
Yes. Yeah. I have both of those written down too.
So amazing. Leland, you know, we know him for bringing Waymaker to the song to America, but he's written so many other songs, from Lion and the Lamb and Where You Are, and so many great songs. And having him, because he really is a deep, I would say, a theologian type guy, and then also having Jd Walt on another time, who is a legit theologian, right?
Yeah, in fact, I felt like I was sitting in a lecture.
Yeah.
I felt like he was teaching. I was sitting with my laptop taking notes, and he was so gracious to give us so much time. That's our longest episode.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but
7
hours. That was crazy. But Leland too, you know, somebody like Leland who obviously is busy, is in the worship scene, doing so much. And he was not rushed. He was not in a hurry. I mean, he gave us his time.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed his story. Leland, his upbringing and some of the things that he shared about being on the road. Just, man, I had him down too.
That's
good stuff. Well, today, formerly the Dean of Chapel at Asbury Theological Seminary, Jd Walt serves as the sower-in-chief for Seedbed, whose sole ambition is to sow for a great awakening by developing theological and ministry training resources for the local church. A sought-after speaker and conference leader, a published author and songwriter, Jd is also the voice of Seedbed's daily texts. He hails from Dumas, Arkansas, and currently resides with his family in Franklin, Tennessee. Jd Walt, welcome to Revival Town Podcast. We're so honored to have you today.
Awesome, man. When I saw you had me from Revival Town.
Church is looking very different for a lot of people at the moment. Have you had to change some of the things you do? in resourcing the church, resourcing people, that type of...
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've kind of found ourselves in this, because obviously business as usual has shut down for the church, which may be the best thing that's ever happened.
Mm.
Because
can you unpack that a little bit, just to get people
well, the church, it's like, I think what we've discovered in this time, we've always known the church is not a building, but people say, well, the church is the people. But I think that what we have really been discovering is that no, the church isn't the people. The church is the connection of the people with God. It's the bond. It's the fellowship. And so what COVID-19 has done is it's created a longing for connection.
Yeah.
Through the gift of being isolated, being quarantined. And it's shown us what we're really missing. We're not missing a building, and we're not missing just a sense of being part of an organization. We're missing really what we didn't have to start with, were deep-hearted connections in the spirit.
Wow.
And I think we've discovered, we have been so amazed at, this has been a time when people's hands, they're like raising their hands and they're saying, I'm awake. I'm waking up now.
An incredible interview today.
Oh, man. I'm just looking at you. You've got your worship hat on, and we have just had the chance to have a conversation with probably one of the leaders in worship at this time globally. Yet, as you listen to this, you'll understand it's not about him. We interviewed Leland Morin, who Leland has been doing worship for many years, written songs like Lion and the Lamb. He also introduced Waymaker to the nation. He'd been in Europe for many years. You seriously, I know every week we say you're going to have a great time listening to this. This one is going to be incredible.
It really is, because it's his story. I mean, really, his life could be a movie.
Absolutely.
It's an excellent story. It is an inspirational story. I just love that we get his heart. He just shares who he is. And this is the kind of guy, we said as soon as we finish this interview, I want to hang out with him. I just connect with him.
Yeah.
Have some coffee, watch some soccer with you guys.
You'll hear so much about a
lot of laughing too.
Football, yeah. So you wrote a song that really not only worships, people can worship God, but it paints this amazing picture of the Lion and the Lamb. So can you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about what you're doing as well now?
Totally. Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. So that song, it's, over the course of the years that we've been doing music and making albums, and that I've been songwriting, the last 17, 18 years of really trying to write songs. There have been these moments along the way, you do your best to steward all the gradually moments, getting better at your instrument, co-writing a lot with people, trying to put good things into all of your gates, your eyes, your ears, what you say, because all that sort of feeds into your imagination, which is really important. And you're trying to do your best to cultivate all those things and be a good steward of all that. So that when suddenly moments come along, because there's graduallys and suddenlies, and when the suddenlies come along, the inspirational moments, you want to be able to have something that you can draw off of.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's important to co-write. It's important to do all those things, to be a good steward. You can't neglect that, to get better at those crafting things. But then it's also important to cultivate and your relationship with God, your intimacy with God, and also putting in really good things that elevate, good, true, and beautiful, that are pure things that help purify your imagination. Yeah. And so over the years, but then there's still these suddenly moments that happen where it's just like, a window opens up and just something just drops in your lap, and you feel like you're just sort of like a funnel, or like a song happens to you, and it's kind of like, I didn't feel like I even wrote that. It just kind of happens.
All right, it's your go, mate.
All right. Again, I said these are not in any particular order, but I will say this. I was the most nervous with this guest. And I tell you what, probably our biggest name, and I know you're friends with her, and I came into the studio that day with high expectations, that little anxious feeling in my stomach, and that is Amy Grant.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I was so blown away by her generosity and her authenticity. She was so genuine and just calm, and she was sitting in her studio, which it's a really nice studio with all those Vince's guitars in the background. She had her cup of tea, and it felt like we were in her living room with her. And it was Christmas time, and she shared a story with us that she said up to that point she's never shared publicly.
Yeah, about Whitney Houston.
Yes, about Whitney Houston. And then we obviously reposted that one. We did a Christmas in July episode.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't listened to the Amy Grant episode, really you need to, because it was powerful.
Yeah. And she's been in the news just recently in the States. If you're listening outside the States, you may not have heard this, but she actually had a bicycle accident. She was out riding, hit a pothole, went over, and was in hospital. Like it was national news. Yeah,
I got dinged on my phone.
Yeah, I texted her this week, and her assistant actually had to respond because she's not allowed any FaceTime or screen time. A little bit of short memory loss has happened. She's doing great. She's getting her stamina back and everything. But
so fast, Amy.
So be praying for Amy at this time. But that was one of, and Chuck, I'll be honest with you, what you saw and what everyone saw on the screen, that if you walked into her home, if you went and saw her backstage, like that's Amy.
That's her.
She's the most down to earth. Me and my wife laugh a lot at, we'll watch some interviews of her and she'll do something really quirky that a celebrity would not normally do, and we would look at each other and go, yep, that's what she does off stage. So that was one of the highlights.
That was special.
Yeah.
Years ago, it was the Gospel Music Association, and I guess I had done something. It was the Dove Awards, and they were doing it at the arena in Nashville. I don't know what it was called then. It's the Bridgestone Arena now. And they have, there are all kinds of people that were participating. There were people whose lives were gospel music. There were people who had sung gospel music, but they had other careers. And I was in my dressing room, and CeCe Winans was involved with the program. And I love her. I mean, what a beautiful, amazing woman. Whitney Houston was also on that show. CeCe was godmother to Whitney's daughter. And anyway, but I'm not sure how it happened, but I looked up at some point, and CeCe and Whitney were both in my dressing room. And I know backstage I never would have made my way to find Whitney. Of course, I had seen her in concert. I had bought a ticket like millions of other people. I had her records. But CeCe grabbed Whitney's hand and my hand. And she said, "Whitney, I want you to meet our sister. This is our sister." And she made such a point of reconciliation. Wow. Such a point. And I remember feeling a resistance in Whitney because of the life she'd lived. And CeCe just, that velvet voice.
Wow.
That's love. Yeah. That's love. Wow. That's Christmas. is reconciliation.
You need a Kleenex? Wow, that was a powerful story, Amy.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And you're right. It's in those moments where you're least expecting it, and something can happen. God will breathe something into the room, and something happens that can change how you are, how you look at life, how you look at people, things like that. So it's
Yes,
amazing.
yeah. And you know what? None of us knows another person's story. And that's, especially, if I could say anything, it would be the strongest lessons I have learned are when you linger 3 seconds looking somebody in the eye. It almost takes your brain 3 seconds to go, oh, there's somebody. Like, they've got their whole story. They've got a life I'll never know. They have the good and the bad. They've had their struggles. But you just don't go through life sensitized to people. You have to be willing to be present long enough. And it's like something happens if you look in somebody's eyes, but I think it takes 3 seconds. And then suddenly it's the person checking you out or the person pumping gas on the other side of the tank. And I don't know, that just being willing to show up.
Yeah.
And I think with that Whitney thing, Cece was just, she made her be there for 3 seconds and something shifted.
That was special.
One of the episodes that I really enjoyed, and I know he's a close friend of mine, was Dave Jane.
Yes.
Now, I don't think we've laughed as much as with Dave. Would you agree?
It was up there with Carrie Pomerelli.
Yeah.
Just, comedian Carrie Pomerelli. But I would say, we probably, just because of the relationship that you guys have, and obviously he's a friend of mine. It was so fun. It just was fun.
Yeah.
And of course we laughed a lot with Dave Mudd too. Good friend of ours. That was a great episode. But yeah, Dave Jane and his story was great. But yeah, that was so fun. A lot of laughter. So if you missed that one, go back. If you just need to laugh today.
Yeah.
And he's just good people.
Yeah.
He really is.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to go kayaking with you guys. I'm bummed about that. I missed it because then my wife had surgery and I wasn't able to go. But yeah, that's cool.
We are the best.
We can get into anywhere for free.
We'll figure out a little sneaky back door.
Do you want to tell them that? I know we haven't even got to the podcast stuff, but who cares? Who cares? Do you want to tell the story of us going to Willow Creek?
I mean,
it's got to be done.
Some people would be ashamed to tell this story. Andy, Mark, and I, we kind of wear it as a badge of honor.
Big badge of honor.
Early 90s, we take a visit to this church we've heard such a lot about called Willow Creek up in the suburbs of Chicago. We get there, and it's just this incredible, massive church. We go in, we were all single at the time, 3 young single guys. We had no money. So we're amazed at this church, and we find out they do breakfast. We're like, this church they've got like a restaurant.
Like legit breakfast.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Buffet breakfast.
We go up and we ask, we're like, can we buy breakfast? They're like, yeah. We said, how much is it? And I think it was like $10 a plate. Like $10 a plate seems a bit steep. So we figure out that for $3 each, we could share a plate. So what we do, and this is where the skills come in.
Big time skills.
So we get a plate. One of us, I don't know if it was me, Mark, or Eddie, one of us gets a plate. So we hit the toast first, because the toast is in little triangles. So we realised that if we put the toast all around the edge of the plate, it doubles the size of your plate. Suddenly you got all the toast. So now we start piling on the eggs and bacon and the pancakes, and the toast is like extended the size of the plate. I remember one of us got to the cashier and she's looking at us thinking, it says $10 a plate, but it's the biggest plate of breakfast I've ever seen.
Well, give us another one.
All right. Episode. Okay. I'm going to have to say Matthew McConaughey. That was so... What? Oh, wait, we didn't get him.
But we are working on it. True story.
I did hear back from his agent.
Oh.
You know, all right. Well, you never know. Yeah. All right. Let's move on. Next one I wrote down for me, you know, is my literary agent, Esther Fedokievich. You know, she's a special person in my life just because she's a part of my story. She's a part of the 41 Will Come story. You know, we talked about that. We unpacked the very first time I approached her, and then when I won the book deal at her conference, it was just man, surreal. So to have her on and talk to her was just extra special for me. You know, so I won't forget it. Some of the things she said have inspired me on my journey where I'm at with my next book. So anyway, I love that was just extra special for me.
You know, I was thinking, and as you said, you're the Dream Center. So my clients for 15 years have been the Barnetts, who started the Dream Center in LA.
Yeah.
And one of the crazy things I had to do for them, nobody knows this, but Tommy Barnett and Matthew Barnett, like for me to sign them as an agent, okay?
Yeah.
This is what they made me do. They had to show that I cared about homeless, and that really got their message. So I had to go on the streets of Skid Row and sleep overnight.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
In a box. And first of all, you have to know I'm super scared of spiders, and like weird sounds freak me out at night. Like,
yeah.
And I remember I was 27 years old, and my husband's like, Dave, you're not going to make this. Like, you are not cut out for like Skid Row. And I'm like, but I'm with Tommy Barnett, Pastor Tommy Barnett. He'll protect me, you know, like I'll be fine. And I remember I was so scared, but I really wanted to represent the Dream Center. Right? I'm like, I really feel like God's called me to like be part of this and what God's doing there. And so I'm like, well, I just got to suck it up, and I got to go, and I got to sleep on Skid Row. And I did. And it changed my life forever. Yeah. So a lot of times, like even what we're doing for like, hey, to get a story or a book, like God was using Tommy and Matthew in my life to actually have a heart for the homeless.
Esther, as well, if you're listening and you were wanting to get into the book writing world, be an author, that's the episode, one of the best episodes to listen to.
Absolutely. And if you want to know what publishers are looking for, I mean, you want some good practical steps. It's not just inspiration, but she shared some practical things that publishers are looking for and how to go about a proposal. In fact, speaking of that, was one of Esther's friends who I met through Esther, Chad Allen.
Yeah.
Was another great episode. He, was spent some time at a castle with one of C.S. Lewis's relatives.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
Into the writing world. If you're a writer, you're a blogger, I strongly encourage you, if you have aspirations of being a published author, then check out the episode with Esther Fedokievich and the episode of Chad Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
how about you?
Well, we just had this guest on the last, probably a month ago, Elisa Childers.
Yes, I wrote her down as well.
Man, she was amazing. If you're into apologetics, and especially with this whole deconstruction stuff that's going on, she is the person who is speaking into that. Very good friends with John Cooper from the Skillet.
Yes.
And they both are on this campaign to bring the truth of the Word of God
unapologetically, with love and grace. And she, I was impressed that she gave us as much time as she did, just because of, again, her schedule, her writing. Her new book, Find Your Truth in Other Lies, is getting ready to release. It was cool. She didn't rush us. She shared. And I think one of the a crazy moment during that episode is when you asked her. I didn't know how she was going to answer. It was, can you give us some names of people who are wolves in sheep's clothing that we should avoid? And I was like, whoa, that's a loaded question. And she graciously answered it. And I love that she did. We're not on a witch hunt, but at the same time, when there are people that are, there are people that have different theology than us, and that's no big deal, right? As long as you know Jesus.
Yeah.
But there are people that have deconstructed away from Jesus, that are leading people away from the Word of God. And we've got to expose those people.
Yeah.
And she did, and she rocked it.
Yeah, that was good.
Boom.
In fact, just a couple of days ago, I have a Facebook group that has about 6,000 people in it. And I said, look, anybody who's got a connection to a teenager, if you're a parent, a youth pastor, auntie, whoever you are, if you know a teen, I want you to answer this question as best you can. What is the number one lie that the teens in your life are buying into? And post after post after post after post, the number one thing that everybody was writing was some iteration of the idea that teens are buying into the idea that your feelings determine truth. So whatever you feel, that's true. And that's where we get my truth, your truth. And what we have to understand, and this is the point I kind of made in another gospel, and I try to make even stronger in Live Your Truth in Other Lies, is that your truth doesn't exist. If there's anything that would be qualified as your truth, that's called an opinion. That's a preference. That's like picking your favorite flavor of ice cream.
Right.
There's no objective standard outside of you to determine the best flavor of ice cream. So if you think it's vanilla and I think it's chocolate, there's nothing to decide between us. That makes it an opinion. That makes it a preference, not an objective reality. However, and most people would agree that objective truth exists. I think that, even relativists go to the bank and expect the money to be in there. They take medicine for the diseases they may have. So everybody lives as if objective truth exists. But the problem with our culture is that when it comes to things like religion and morality, our culture has taken those out of the objective reality category, like medicine and banking and math, and they've put them in the ice cream category.
Right.
They've put them in the subjective category. So really what you believe about God, what you believe is right and wrong, that just depends on you and what you think, and you look inside you to find what your truth is and you live it. Well, the problem with relegating especially things like morality to the subjective category is if you and I disagree over what's right and wrong, and there's nobody above us to decide what that is. Now, there might be a police officer and then a law or a government, but we've seen whole governments do things that are objectively wrong. Look at the Nazi Holocaust.
Right.
Look at America in a certain year when it was perfectly legal to own slaves. That doesn't make it right just because the most people thought that was okay.
Right.
And so if it's just relative, then it's whoever has the most power that gets to control what's right and wrong. That can't be right. And so I think we just need to make this point for people so that they can understand that morality is not in the ice cream category. It's objective, but it only is objective if God exists, because he's the moral standard above us that we appeal to say, this is why I believe this is right or wrong.
All right, you're up.
All right. I wrote down Chris Brown. We've had him twice. I read his book after the second time, right around the second time we had him. But the moment that jumps out to me, especially because I'm a pastor, I love the local church, and I wasn't very familiar. I mean, I was social media friends with him, but I didn't get a chance to meet him until we did the interview. And I felt like I was at a conference.
Yeah.
And I took more notes when we interviewed him than any guest we've ever had.
Yeah.
He just was like, it was like a fire hose.
Yeah.
He just bam, bam, bam. So much wisdom and insight. And now him and Holly, who we've had Holly. So you can't say Chris Brown without Holly Brown, because we had her as well. Yeah. And she's such a gifted communicator and leader. And of course, we had on Adam Weber, which was right up there too. So I mean, the Browns, Adam Weber, Jason Van Ruler, they're all connected, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But I just loved the wisdom and knowledge that Chris Brown shared with us.
Yeah. But one of the things that I did love about you was how you honored other churches within Columbia area. So the Belonging is a big church in Nashville. They have bought a campus to the area where you're at, but before you guys even got rolling, you were at their services, you were championing on the Sealies. Like, it wasn't this, oh no, there's another church. I'm being honest, a church that is getting established in Nashville. They haven't been around many years, but definitely, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. And most pastors would have been like, oh no. but you embraced it and really became friends with all those guys. Could you speak into that a little bit? Because I think some pastors really need to hear about that.
Yeah, so you just opened up a can of worms when it comes to my passion. We just completely forget that we're on the same team. We just really do. I'm studying Ephesians right now, in Ephesians chapter 4. There's a scripture, I believe it may be verse 1 in chapter 4. But you guys, those of you that are familiar with the Bible, you'll remember this. But it talks about the first 3 chapters of Ephesians talks about our identity in Christ and kind of who we are in Christ, and really how we were dead in our sin, and but Jesus, but that but God moment. And then you get into chapter 4, 5, and 6 of Ephesians. It talks about how that should look. Well, right in verse 1, it talks about 3 different character traits. It talks about how we should walk in humility. It actually says complete humility. And I hate the fact that Paul put in the word complete. I'm like, oh, why'd you have to do that? I'm like, I was feeling pretty good about myself when we said humble or but complete humility. Ouch. It goes on to say later on in that verse, it talks about that we are to be people of unity. And so like the way that we talk, the way that we act, we need to have unifying language, we need to have unifying behavior. And then it says to be people of peace, all in the same verse. Yeah. And so really, really powerful as you're going from who we are in Christ, chapters 1 through 3, this transitional verse of chapter 4, verse 1, going into the how, talks about those 3 things first. And so for me, as I'm kind of starting a ministry in this area, I think there's no room for this territorialism.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, how about you?
We've talked about the Delirious Boys, but one of my favorite ones was with Ellie Linebear, which is Martin Smith's daughter.
Yes.
Who is blowing up. In fact, I just saw she's just released a song, and it's one of the Maverick City songs, and she has nailed it, and it's going to go all over the country. She has more, it's crazy, right? She has more followers on Instagram, more hits than her dad. Her dad's been doing this for 30 odd years, Martin, but Ellie, it was just good because it felt fresh. It was one of those, she's a young artist that is exploding now. They definitely, her and her husband's like her manager, so they had to balance COVID and all that as well, living in the US and in England. But that was just a fun episode. Again, and another Brit. So, it's always good when we get the Brits on. What about you?
Yeah, and she was a lot of fun too, I got to say. So you need to go back and listen to that episode. I loved her bubbly personality. So we laughed a lot too with that one.
Yeah.
So we are honored to have Ellie Linebear on Revival Town Podcast. Ellie, welcome.
Also on my album Lost and Wonder, there's a song called Angels, and it's probably one of my favorites on the album, one that I always went back to, just listening to demos and after it was recorded, I gravitated so much purely because it meant so much to me. It was something that I would play over myself, traveling and on flights that I was terrified. I hate flying, and I would just have to let myself sing over myself, Sounds weird, but really helps.
I'm right there with you, by the way.
So this song, it came out all the time where I just found out a friend of a friend, she was a young person, she just tried to take her own life. And I don't even know her. I don't know her name, but it completely threw me. And it just opened my eyes and my heart. I think God was just breaking my heart for people who feel like this, who feel like the only other option is to take your life. And, it's so final. That's what's so crazy. And it's so many, and it's not just young people, it's young and old. It's all different nationalities and cultures. And there's so many people out there who just don't have hope or don't feel like there's much to live for, and that spoke to me so much and moved me so much that I wanted to write a song about it, hence talking about angels and that God sends his angels to guard us and protect us and to be with us. So that's where Angels came out.
All right.
I wrote down Jamie Markley and Scott Robbins.
Yeah.
Separate episodes they're tied together because they host a national secular talk show.
Yeah.
That's one of the top radio shows in the country.
Yeah.
All right. They're blowing up as we speak. They recently opened up in the Dallas market, but they're in Portland, but they're in like 150 markets throughout the U.S.
Yeah.
And they're both, so 2 out of the 3 guys that host that show, the Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins show, 2 of the 3 are believers.
Yeah.
And we had them both on. And of course, Scott's story is miraculous.
Yeah.
He was dead for 40 minutes, came back during minute 41, which of course had all my bells going off.
Yeah, it was good for your book promotion.
Yeah, right. So, but Jamie is tied to that story because he was the one who rallied people to pray. And that heart attack changed Scott's life forever regarding his own walk with Christ. So I had both of those down.
That's good.
That's good stuff. How about you?
And we went through the regular motions, and Jamie, being Jamie, of course, had to go through the contract with a fine-tooth comb. I'm glad he does that because he's convinced there's something in there that we need to know about. But anyway, we went through all of that, signed the deal, left, got home. 2 weeks later, I had a massive heart attack without a pulse. The 911 was called. The fireman came to my house, restarted my heart, got me transported to the hospital, to OSF. And the deal was they were going to stabilize me and then do the surgery the next day. Well, I would have none of that. So I went into cardiac arrest. I was in cardiac arrest for 40 minutes. No pulse for 40 minutes. Minute 41, there was a heartbeat detected. And from there, they took me immediately into surgery, thinking, okay, if we don't do this now, he's definitely going to die. He could very well die on the table because he's not strong enough for this, right?
Wow.
But they took me in. They did 5 bypasses. I always say this, 5 bypasses, an overpass, and a Hardee's. They put all that in. But there were 5 bypasses put in.
Wow.
I survived the surgery, barely. Wow. I coded 2 more times after that. Not for that length of time, but they brought me back again. Now, during the 40-minute coding, my family was called. Well, whoever wasn't there was called. Better get here, because this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to last much longer. Priest came in, last rites, whole 9 yards, right? Because they thought, again, this is it. This is the way it's going to go.
Wow.
And I survived it, and I survived day 2 and day 3. In my recovery, I was in the hospital for 6 months. I was in a coma for a month. But my kidneys weren't functioning either. So I was on dialysis. What could have happened. Like I said, it wasn't a incremental bad things. It was like the Band-Aid got ripped off all at once.
Oh my.
So I was on dialysis, and while I was in the hospital, I started dialysis, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't walk. I had a trach. You guys can still see the remnants of the trach in my throat. Yeah. My daughter, who's a nurse practitioner, didn't necessarily want them to do that because she knew it would probably destroy my voice. But it was either that or die. How about you?
My last one, Tim Hughes.
Okay.
Another Brit, sorry. But the reason why I enjoyed Tim Hughes' story is, yes, he wrote this mega hit, right? Here I Am to Worship. If you go to any type of church, they're singing that to this day. I mean, it's years on. But the thing I love about is how he is now a pastor. He's actually a vicar in the Church of England Church, and has taken this old building in a city that's pretty hard in Birmingham, and is seeing some incredible things happen in Birmingham through Gas Street Church. And so that was just a fun one for me.
He's the lead pastor of Gas Street Church, Birmingham, which he leads alongside with his wife, Rachel. It is in the UK, but you know him as a worship leader, songwriter for such hits as Here I Am to Worship.
We're having a time, people being prayed for, very low key. I thought I'd just quietly play it, see what happens, and kind of quietly played it. No one really noticed. And then Mike Pilavacci, who was the pastor at the time, came up to me and said, "What is that song?" I said, "Oh, it's just a new song I've written." He said, "You are going to play that every week, many years." And he just made me play it. And I mean, it was, again, remarkable, actually, because you got to remember, I was
20 years old, just finished my degree in history, American history. No one had a clue who I was. I hadn't written any other songs really. And he said, that's going to be the most sung song in the world.
Yeah.
And you're going to sing that every week for many, many years. And he was completely right. But just a crazy kind of seeing something, a potential, just getting a sense of that there's something on that song in a way that I didn't get it. I'd missed it. I didn't think it's particularly special. Even to this day, I was slightly surprised. But what is it about that song that seems to have connected so much? I don't know. There just seems to be a bit of a God factor in it, which I didn't feel particularly spiritual when I was writing it. As I said, it kind of was written in different parts over a 6-month period. So, but very grateful to God for it, and it's been amazing to see how the song's connected.
Well, I just jumped on Spotify, and just on Spotify alone, your version of singing that has had over 14 million downloads just on that one song, Tim. So, and that's, like you said, that's not Michael W. Smith's version. You know, it's like...
Well, the crazy thing, I got this, I was presented with this thing a while ago where they were saying that just in North America, they estimate that 50 million people would sing that song every Sunday. Wow. You know, it's a scale of the size of church in America, but it never ceases to amaze me, this little thing you're creating in your room. And often our lives can feel so kind of small, and then suddenly just God takes something. It's like, wow, how did that happen? And then there are other songs I've written that I feel much more confident about, and nothing happens with them. You know, no one gets to hear them, and it's just that's the mystery of creativity.
Your last one, Chuck.
All right, my last one, and before we do, what I want to say about Tim Hughes too is, again, so much wisdom, insight. I mean, I've always known him as a phenomenal worship leader and artist, but I saw that pastoral side of him.
Yeah.
And it was cool. And what he did with the song, The Blessing.
Yeah.
You go back and watch that.
Yeah.
So, in fact, it was just cool.
It was
All right,
amazing.
my last one. All right. I had down the moments we shared with Angela Williams, because I started following her on social media. She's since launched a podcast that is exploding over in Australia. And I know she's a good friend of yours, and we had to come in like at 7 in the morning that day, or 6:30 in the morning. Something was crazy, because it was super late for her, and she was gracious. And
because she's in Australia.
She's in Australia. Yeah. Her dad's a billionaire.
Yeah.
And it was just so interesting. Yeah. I mean, for just talk about a story that I think if you haven't heard it, you'll just be like, what? You got to go back.
That was a great one. Yeah, she stayed up late for us, but I tell you what, that was, and for me, obviously, I grew up with the family in the area in England, and had many, many memories. So that was a fun one for me, going down history lane, so to speak.
Yeah. So, all right. Episode 100, almost in the can.
Almost in the can. Tell you what, it's been a good one. But just going over the last 100 episodes, some of our favorites. But one of the things that we've done so much, and we hear a lot of responses from, is this: Tate and his mate.
Tate and his mate.
Well, if you are listening,
we've even had people like draw Tate and his mate stuff and send it to us.
Oh, yeah. And say stuff to us. That's another thing. We'll just throw this out. If you go onto onto the website, revivaltownpodcast.com, when you get up there, you'll see Listen Now. If you hit the Listen Now, a page will open on Anchor, which is what we use, and you can then hit and leave a message for us. And I know some people have done that. And if you want to just say, hey, this was my favorite bit.
It's an audio message, by the way. Audio message.
If you want to leave us an audio message of what your favorite episode has been, or what your favorite Tate and his mate word is, then let us know.
Let us know, and you might hear yourself on Revival Town Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do right now is, Chuck, we're going to go through some of the words that we've gone through. And I want you to tell me what some of your favorite ones are, or the ones that are like.
I have one favorite. I can tell you right now. My very favorite word that I use a lot, and I've talked about it a lot, is plonker.
Oh, Yeah, I mean,
right.
You had the shirt on the other day when we went to the Cubs.
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
underneath my Cubs jersey.
Underneath your Cubs jersey. Yeah.
The Don't Be a Plonker. In fact, we have a merch store if you didn't know that. If you go to revivaltownpodcast.com, click on merch, and you can order your own Plonker shirt. Don't be a Plonker. Because Plonker is a British slang word that means basically don't be an idiot.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
yeah.
and I've had people ask me at the store, wherever, bank. I've had, you know, in fact, just about a week ago, I think I was at Dollar General.
Yeah.
What's Plonker? Idiot.
Yeah.
Don't be an idiot.
Oh, I mean, we've had. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've kept it rolling. I'll be watching some English shows, and there'll be words that will appear. You know, they'll say, and I'm like, oh, I totally forgot that, and I've brought it in because it's hard to keep it going. I mean, we're 100 in.
Right.
One of my favorite is Skew Whiff.
Skew Whiff, yep. I'm working that into my next book, by the way.
You are?
Skew Whiff, yep.
Wow, yeah.
And I love Chuffed.
Chuffed. Oh, yeah.
Chuffed. And in fact, I was watching a post. I don't know if it was a reel on Instagram by Angela Williams, or it was some kind. I don't know if it was something she said, or if it was in text version. But she used the word chuffed.
Did she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's part of her vocabulary.
Oh yeah.
Wow, man.
Chuffed
so it's been fun.
Chuffed was good. I mean, there's been so much nosh. Let's go and have some nosh. We'll have some nosh in a little bit.
Hey, yes. In fact,
on.
I even have people in my church that's come up to me sometimes and will say a word to me or text me one of the words, and they're using them in their own vocabulary.
Oh, yeah. and you know what has been good for you as well? It got to a point where I wasn't just bringing the words in, I was then bringing some food in.
Yeah.
Now, do you want to talk to us about some of your favorite foods?
You know, I love the, probably the Cadbury chocolate.
Oh, man.
That was the best when you actually shipped to me. It came in the mail. A variety of Cadbury chocolates. It was fantastic. I just had one a couple of days ago. I still have a couple left.
Oh man, it's been like 7-8 months.
Yeah, I broke my tooth, but it was great. No. So good. The little orange jelly things. They're
is that
chocolate
the Jaffa cakes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're good.
That jumps out at me because you also sent some home with me. And then
sausage rolls were always good.
Oh, the sausage rolls were fantastic. I could go for a sausage roll right now.
Yeah.
But then probably my favorite are the digestives.
Oh man.
Yeah, the chocolate digestives.
Chocolate digestives. Yeah, you got to have the chocolate on it.
Oh,
yeah.
I dip those in my coffee.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. All right.
So Tate and his mate's been great, mate.
Everyone just remember, we're taking the country back one by one. That's how we do it. We find a gullible American and we just feed them English chocolate and we take it one by one. So, well, Chuck, as always, it's been great doing this with you.
Likewise.
100. Let's go for another 100.
Let's
right?
do it. Let's do it right now.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah. So hey, don't forget to tell us who you want us to interview, and go to the website and leave us a voice message, and we'll put you on.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, guys, thank you so much for being on Revival Town podcast with us. You are on this journey with us. That's why we say that. So thank you for coming with us. And Chuck, as always, great to do this with you.
Love doing it with you, mate. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Revival Town Podcast. Make sure you're following us on social media and remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, head on over to revivaltownpodcast.com.